3. True Starbucks Horror Stories. Story 1. The Regular Part 1. My name is Elijah, and I was 23 years old when this happened. I worked as a barista at a Starbucks in downtown Seattle, Washington. It was a Thursday morning, 7:45 a.m., and the store was packed with the usual rush of commuters and office workers. That is when I noticed him for the first time. He was sitting at a corner table, a Grand Pike Place in front of him, and he was staring at me. Not at the menu board behind me, not at his phone, at me. Every time I looked up from the espresso machine, his eyes were locked onto mine. Before I continue, hit that subscribe button and leave a comment below, because that man came back every single day for 6 weeks, and what he was planning still terrifies me. Part 2. I had been working at that Starbucks for about 2 years. It was one of the busiest locations in the city, situated on a corner near several corporate office buildings. We served hundreds of customers every day, most of them regulars who came in at the same time, ordered the same drink, and left without making much conversation. I liked the job. The pace was fast, which made the shifts go by quickly. My co-workers were friendly, and the tips were decent. I'd gotten good at reading people, anticipating their orders before they reached the counter, making small talk while I steamed milk and pulled espresso shots. The morning rush was always the most intense. From 7 to 9, the line would stretch to the door, and we would work in a frenzy of activity, calling out drinks and managing the chaos. It was during these rushes that I first noticed him. He was maybe 50 years old, with grey hair, cut short, and a neatly trimmed beard. He dressed professionally, button-down shirts and slacks, like he worked in one of the nearby offices. Nothing about his appearance was unusual, but his behavior was different. Most customers looked at their phones while they waited. They chatted with co-workers, read newspapers, or stared blankly into space. This man did none of those things. He watched me. From the moment he sat down at his corner table to the moment he left, his eyes followed me around the store. When I worked the register, he watched. When I made drinks at the espresso bar, he watched. When I stepped into the back to grab supplies, I would catch him craning his neck to see where I had gone. The first day I told myself I was imagining things. The second day I mentioned it to my co-worker Jasmine. "That guy in the corner has been staring at me all morning." She glanced over. "Maybe he thinks you are cute." "It does not feel like that. It feels creepy." She shrugged. "Just ignore him. If he does anything weird, we will call the manager." I tried to take her advice, but ignoring him became harder with each passing day. Part 3. By the end of the first week, his routine was clear. He arrived at 7:45 every morning, ordered a Grand Pike Place, and sat at the same corner table. He stayed for exactly 1 hour, never looking at his phone, never reading anything, just watching me. At 8:45, he would stand up, throw away his cup, and leave without saying a word. I started to dread his arrival. I would glance at the door around 7:40, my stomach tightening with anticipation. When he walked in, our eyes would meet, and he would smile. Not a friendly smile, a knowing smile, like we shared a secret. On the 8th day, he spoke to me for the first time. I was working the register when he approached to order. Usually, one of my co-workers took his order, but today, I was alone at the counter. "Grande Pike Place," he said. "For here, or to go for here?" He paused, looking at my name tag. Elijah. That is a nice name, biblical. Thanks. I rang up his order, trying to keep my voice neutral. That will be $3.25. He handed me a $5 bill. When I gave him his change, his fingers brushed against mine and lingered there for just a moment too long. I like watching you work, Elijah. You are very efficient. I pulled my hand back. Thank you. Your coffee will be ready at the bar. He smiled that knowing smile and walked away. My hands were shaking as I made his drink. Part 4. I told my manager about him the next day. Her name was Patricia, a no-nonsense woman in her 40s who had been running Starbucks locations for over a decade. Has he threatened you? She asked. No, he just stares at me, every day, for an hour. I understand that is uncomfortable, but staring is not against the law. Unless he does something specific, there is not much I can do. Can you at least talk to him? Ask him to stop. Patricia sighed. I will keep an eye on him. If he escalates, we will take action. But he did not escalate. Not in any way that was obvious. He just kept coming. Every morning, same time, same table, same watchful eyes. After 2 weeks, I started noticing him outside of work. I saw him at the grocery store near my apartment, browsing the produce section while I picked up some fruit. Our eyes met, and he smiled. I saw him at the gym I went to after work, walking on a treadmill while I lifted weights. He did not approach me, did not say anything. Just walked on that treadmill watching. I saw him on my street, sitting in a parked car when I took out my trash one evening. He drove away when he noticed me looking. He was following me, tracking my movements, learning my routine. Part 5. I went to the police on the 3rd week. The officer who took my statement was sympathetic, but not encouraging. Has he made any direct threats? No. Has he touched you inappropriately? He touched my hand once, when I gave him change. But nothing overtly threatening or sexual. No, but he is following me. I have seen him at the grocery store, at my gym, on my street. The officer nodded. I understand this is frightening, but from a legal standpoint, he has not committed a crime. Being in public places is not illegal. We cannot arrest someone for shopping at the same grocery store or going to the same gym. So I just have to wait until he does something worse. The officer's face was grim. I can document this interaction. If he escalates, the documentation will help establish a pattern. But right now, there is nothing we can do. I left the police station feeling helpless and afraid. That night I checked every lock on my apartment 3 times. I closed all my blinds. I slept with a knife under my pillow. It was not enough. At 2:30 a.m., I woke up to a sound outside my bedroom window. Someone was tapping on the glass. Part 6. I lay frozen in bed, listening. Tap, tap, tap. Slow, deliberate, rhythmic. Like someone knocking on a door and waiting to be let in. My bedroom was on the 2nd floor. Whoever was tapping had climbed up, somehow was standing on the narrow ledge outside my window. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. 911, what is your emergency? Someone is outside my window, I whispered. 2nd floor apartment. They are tapping on the glass. The dispatcher told me to stay calm, to stay away from the window, that officers were on their way. The tapping continued, then stopped, then a voice, his voice, muffled through the glass but unmistakable. I know you are awake, Elijah. I can see the light from your phone. I stopped breathing. I have been patient. I have been watching, waiting, giving you time to notice me. But you keep ignoring me. That is not very nice. I heard sirens in the distance, growing closer. I will see you tomorrow, Elijah, at work. We can talk more then. I heard a scraping sound, then footsteps on the roof above me, then silence. The police arrived 5 minutes later. They searched the area, but found no one. They did find scuff marks on the wall outside my window where someone had climbed up. They found a footprint on the narrow ledge, but they did not find him. Part 7. I didn't go to work the next day, or the day after that. I stayed at a friend's apartment, afraid to go home, afraid to be anywhere he might find me. But I could not hide forever. After a week, I went back to work, hoping that maybe he had lost interest. Maybe the police visit had scared him off. He was there, same table, same smile. When our eyes met, he raised his coffee cup in a little salute. I walked straight to Patricia's office and told her everything. The following, the window, the police report. She listened, her face growing more serious with each detail. "That is it," she said. "I am banning him from the store. If he comes back, we are calling the police immediately." She walked out to the floor and approached his table. I watched from the back room as she spoke to him. His expression did not change. He nodded politely, stood up, and walked toward the exit. But before he left, he turned and looked directly at me through the back room doorway. He mouthed 2 words. Not over. Part 8. The police finally took action after Patricia provided them with security footage and her statement about banning him from the store. They identified him as Gerald Allen Whitmore, 53 years old, a former accountant who had lost his job 2 years earlier. He had a history. Restraining orders from 2 other women in different states. A conviction for trespassing that had been pleaded down from stalking. He was a serial predator who moved from city to city, fixating on random people, watching and following until something made him move on. Or until he escalated. When they searched his apartment, they found a wall covered in photographs of me. Photos taken from outside my apartment window. Photos taken through the Starbucks windows. Photos of me at the gym, at the grocery store, walking to my car. There were notebooks filled with observations about my schedule, my habits, my friends. He knew what time I woke up, what time I went to bed, who I talked to on the phone. And there were plans. Detailed plans about how he would introduce himself properly once he decided the time was right. Gerald Whitmore was arrested and charged with stalking, harassment, and trespassing. He is currently serving 5 years in a Washington state prison. But the damage was done. I quit my job at Starbucks. I moved to a different neighborhood. I changed my phone number, deleted my social media, and started looking over my shoulder everywhere I went. It has been 3 years since Gerald Whitmore tapped on my window. I still check my locks 3 times before bed. I still scan the faces of customers wherever I work. I still freeze when I see a man sitting alone watching me with too much interest. Some wounds heal, some fears fade, but some stay with you forever. Story 2, The Back Room, Part 1. My name is Marcus, and I was 21 years old when this happened. I worked the closing shift at a Starbucks in suburban Atlanta, Georgia. It was a Sunday night, 10:15 p.m., and I was alone in the store doing my final cleaning tasks. My coworker had gone home sick an hour earlier, and my manager had left me to close by myself. The store had been quiet all evening, and I was looking forward to getting home. That is when I heard a sound from the back room, a thump like something heavy falling. The back room was supposed to be empty. I had checked it myself 30 minutes ago. Before I continue, hit subscribe and leave a comment. Because what I found in that back room changed my life forever. Part 2. The Starbucks I worked at was in a strip mall on the outskirts of Atlanta, sandwiched between a nail salon and a dry cleaner. During the day, we got steady business from the nearby residential neighborhoods. But at night, the strip mall emptied out quickly, and by 9 p.m. we were usually the only store still open. We closed at 10 on Sundays. My usual routine was to stop taking orders. At 9:45, clean the equipment and mop the floors, then do a final walkthrough before locking up around 10:30. That Sunday, my co-worker Destiny had gotten sick around 8 p.m. Stomach bug, she said, and she looked genuinely miserable. My manager, a guy named Trevor, told her to go home and said he would stay to help me close. But at 9:30, Trevor got a phone call. Some kind of emergency with his kid. He looked at me apologetically and asked if I could handle closing alone. I said yes. I'd closed by myself before. It was not that hard. He left, and I continued my routine. The last customer walked out at 9:50, and I locked the front door behind them. The store felt different when it was empty. During business hours, there was always noise. The hiss of the espresso machine, the chatter of customers, the background music playing from the speakers. But at night, with everything shut down, the silence was oppressive. I cleaned the espresso machine first, then wiped down the pastry case. I swept the floor and mopped the area behind the counter. Everything was going smoothly. Then I heard the thump. Part 3. It came from the back room, a space behind the main floor, where we kept extra supplies, the safe, and the employee lockers. The door to the back room was closed, which was normal. We kept it closed during business hours to prevent customers from wandering back there. I stopped mopping and listened. Silence. Maybe something had fallen off a shelf. The supply shelves were old and rickety, and boxes sometimes shifted on their own. I went back to mopping. Thump. This time it was louder, definitely coming from the back room. I set down the mop and walked toward the door. My footsteps echoed on the tile floor, unnaturally loud in the quiet store. I put my hand on the door handle and hesitated. I had checked the back room at 9:30, right before Trevor left. I had gone back there to grab more cup lids from the supply shelves. The room had been empty, but someone could have come in after that. The back door led to an alley behind the strip mall. It was supposed to be locked at all times, but the lock was old and finicky. Sometimes it didn't catch properly. "Hello," I called out. "Is someone back there?" No response. I pushed the door open slowly. Part 4. The back room was dark. The lights were on a motion sensor, and they should have turned on when I opened the door. But they did not. I fumbled for my phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam swept across the room. Supply shelves along the walls. The safe in the corner. The employee lockers on the far side. Everything looked normal. I stepped inside, keeping the door propped open with my foot. The motion sensor finally kicked in and the lights flickered on. The room was empty. No intruder, no animal, nothing out of place. Except for one thing. One of the employee lockers was open. Not all the way, just a few inches, the door not quite latched. I knew that locker. It belonged to Destiny. She had left early because she was sick. Maybe she'd forgotten to close it properly when she grabbed her things. I walked over to close it, and I saw the shoes. Through the gap in the locker door, I could see a pair of shoes at the bottom. Work shoes, like the ones our employees wore. But the locker was not big enough to hold a person standing up. The shoes were positioned like someone was crouched inside, curled up, hiding. Part 5. I backed away from the locker, my heart pounding. "I know you are in there," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Come out, now." Silence. "I'm calling the police. Come out of the locker right now." Still nothing. I pulled out my phone and dialed 911. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. 911, what is your emergency? "My name is Marcus. I work at the Starbucks in the Brookwood Plaza strip mall. There is someone hiding in an employee locker in our back room. I need help." The dispatcher asked for my location and said officers were being sent. I backed out of the room, keeping my eyes on the locker. The door had not moved. Whoever was inside was waiting. I propped the back room door open so I could see inside, then retreated to the front of the store. I wanted to be near the exit, near the street, where I could run if I needed to. I stood behind the counter, watching the back room through the open door. The locker was visible from where I stood. For 3 minutes, nothing happened. Then the locker door swung open. Part 6. A man emerged, unfolding himself from the cramped space like some kind of insect. He was thin, almost skeletal, with dirty clothes and matted hair. His eyes were wild, darting around the room. He saw me watching from the front and froze. For a long moment, we just stared at each other across the length of the store. Then he ran. Not toward me, but toward the back door. I heard the metal bar slam down, heard the door bang open, heard his footsteps pounding down the alley. I did not chase him. I stayed exactly where I was until the police arrived. They searched the alley and the surrounding area, but did not find him. He had vanished into the night. But they found plenty of evidence in the locker. Part 7. He had been living in that locker for at least a week. Inside, the police found a sleeping bag rolled up tight, bottles of water and food wrappers from our pastry case. He had been stealing food from the display after we closed eating it in the locker and hiding the evidence. There was more. A small notebook filled with observations. Who worked which shifts? What time we closed? Who usually stayed late? My name was in the notebook, multiple times, with notes about when I worked alone. He had been watching the store for weeks, learning our patterns, waiting for the right moment. The police identified him through fingerprints left on the water bottles. His name was Dennis Ray Coggins, 41 years old, with a history of burglary and trespassing. He'd been released from prison 6 months earlier, and had been living on the streets ever since. They caught him 3 days later trying to break into a restaurant across town. But catching him did not erase what he had done, what he had planned. Part 8. The notebook the police found was detailed. Dennis Coggins had been watching our store for over a month. He knew which employees worked which shifts. He knew that on Sundays we often closed with a skeleton crew. He knew that the back door lock was faulty, and he knew that I sometimes closed alone. The police would not tell me exactly what his plans were, But the detective who interviewed me said the notebook contained concerning entries about employees who worked the closing shift. Me, specifically. I quit my job at Starbucks the week after the incident. I could not go into that back room anymore, could not walk past that row of lockers without seeing that door swing open, without seeing him unfold himself from inside. For months, I had nightmares. I would dream about opening locker doors and finding eyes staring back at me. I would dream about being alone in empty stores, hearing footsteps behind me, knowing that someone was there but never being able to see them. I work at a corporate office now, 9 to 5, surrounded by people with security guards at every entrance. No closing shifts, no being alone in empty buildings. But I still think about Dennis Coggins sometimes. The way he was curled up in that locker patient and still waiting for me to leave so he could come out. And I wonder how many other stores have people like him, hiding in the spaces we forget to check, watching, waiting. If you work retail, please check your back rooms carefully before you close. Check the places that seem too small for a person to fit. Check the corners you usually ignore, because you never know who might be hiding there, waiting for the moment when you are finally alone. Story 3. The Drive-thru Part 1. My name is Tyler, and I was 24 years old when this happened. I worked the late shift at a Starbucks with a drive-thru in suburban Denver, Colorado. It was a Friday night, 11:20 p.m., and the store was nearly empty. Most of our late-night business came through the drive-thru, and I was working the window alone while my co-worker handled the bar. That is when a car pulled up that made me immediately uneasy. A dark sedan with tinted windows idling at my window. The driver ordered a tall black coffee. Nothing unusual about that. But when I handed him his drink, he did not take it. He just stared at me with eyes that seemed to look right through me. Subscribe now before I tell you what happened next, because that man did not just want coffee. Part 2. Our Starbucks was one of those standalone locations with a drive-thru lane that wrapped around the building. We were on a busy commercial strip during the day, but at night, things quieted down considerably. The stores around us closed by 9, and by 11 the parking lot was mostly empty. We stayed open until midnight on Fridays and Saturdays to catch the late-night crowd. College students, night shift, workers, people heading home from bars. The traffic was light, but steady. Maybe 1 or 2 cars every 10 minutes. I liked the late shift. It was calmer than the morning rush, and the customers were usually more relaxed. Most of them just wanted their coffee and wanted to get home. That Friday had been typical, slow but steady, with a manageable flow of cars through the drive-thru. My co-worker, a girl named Becca, was handling the bar while I worked the window. Around 11:15, a dark sedan pulled up to the speaker. The windows were tinted so heavily I could not see inside. "Welcome to Starbucks. What can I get for you tonight?" A pause. Then a man's voice, low and flat. "Tall, black coffee. Anything else?" Another pause. "No. That will be $2.45 at the window." The car pulled forward. As it approached my window, I got my first look at the driver. He was maybe 40, with a shaved head and a face that looked like it had never smiled. His eyes were fixed on me with an intensity that made my skin crawl. I slid open the window. $2.45. He handed me a $5 bill. I gave him his change and his coffee. But he did not take it. He just sat there, his hand on the steering wheel, staring at me. "Sir, your coffee." No response. just that unblinking stare. Part 3. I held out the coffee, my arm starting to ache from the position. "Sir, is everything okay?" Finally, he spoke. His voice was the same flat monotone as before. "You have kind eyes, Tyler." I felt a chill run down my spine. My name tag was visible, but the way he said my name made it sound intimate, personal. "Thanks," I said, forcing a smile. "Here is your coffee." He took the cup slowly, his fingers brushing against mine. The contact lasted a fraction of a second too long. "I will see you again," he said. Then he drove away. I stood at the window, my heart pounding, watching his taillights disappear into the night. Becca came up behind me. "You okay? You look pale." "That guy was weird, really weird," she shrugged. "Late night brings out the weirdos. You know that." I did know that, but something about this felt different. The way he had stared at me, the way he'd said my name, the way he'd promised to come back. I tried to shake it off and get back to work. 45 minutes later, the same car pulled up to the speaker again. Part 4. I recognized the sedan immediately. The same tinted windows, the same slow approach. "Welcome to Starbucks, what can I get for you?" Tall black coffee, the same order, the same flat voice. I felt my stomach clench. "Anything else?" A pause. Then, "Just you, Tyler." I did not respond. I just stared at the speaker, trying to process what he had said. "That will be 2:45 at the window," I said automatically. The car pulled forward. I turned to Becca. "It is him again, the weird guy. He just said something really creepy." Becca frowned. "What did he say?" "He said he wanted me. Just me." Her eyes widened. "That is messed up. Do you want me to take the window?" I thought about it. But something told me that if I hid from him, he would not like it. He would escalate. "No, I will handle it, but stay close." The sedan reached my window. I slid it open, but did not extend my arm with the coffee. "Sir, I am going to have to ask you not to come back here. You are making me uncomfortable." He tilted his head slightly, like a curious dog. "Uncomfortable? I am sorry to hear that. I just wanted to see you again." "Well, you have seen me. Please take your coffee and do not come back." I held out the cup. He took it, and this time his hand wrapped completely around mine, trapping it. "I do not think you understand, Tyler. I have been watching you for weeks. I know what time you start your shift. I know what time you end. I know what car you drive." He squeezed my hand tighter. "You are exactly what I have been looking for." Part 5. I yanked my hand back coffee, spilling everywhere. "Leave now, or I am calling the police." He smiled. It was the first expression I'd seen on his face, and it was terrifying. "You can call whoever you want. It will not change anything." He put the car in drive and pulled away slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. The moment he was gone, I slammed the window shut and locked it. Becca was already on the phone with the police. I could hear her giving them the description of the car, the license plate number she'd managed to catch. The police arrived about 15 minutes later. We told them everything. The first visit, the second visit, what he had said, how he had grabbed my hand. They took our statements and said they would look into it. But the officer's face was grim. Without a direct threat, there is not much we can do, but we will increase patrols in this area and keep an eye out for the vehicle. It was not enough. I knew it was not enough. My manager arrived after I called him. He said I could go home, that he would close the store himself. I walked to my car in the parking lot, my keys clutched between my fingers like a weapon. That is when I saw it. The dark sedan parked at the far end of the lot, engine, running lights off, watching. Part 6. I froze. My car was in the opposite direction, about 50 feet away. If I ran for it, he would see me. If I went back inside, he would know I was scared. I pulled out my phone and called the police again. He is here, in the parking lot. The man who was harassing me. He's parked at the far end, watching me. The dispatcher told me to go back inside and wait for officers. I turned and walked quickly toward the store entrance. Behind me, I heard an engine rev. I did not look back. I just ran. I made it inside and locked the door behind me. Through the glass, I could see the sedan slowly circling the parking lot, prowling like a predator. The police arrived 5 minutes later, 2 cruisers' lights flashing. The sedan stopped circling. It sat motionless for a moment, then pulled out of the parking lot and disappeared down the road. The officers searched the area, but did not find him. They took down the partial plate number Becker had noted and said they would try to identify the driver. They never did. Part 7. For the next 3 weeks I was terrified. I changed my schedule so I was never working the drive-thru at night. I started parking closer to the entrance under the brightest lights. I had co-workers walk me to my car after every shift. But I kept seeing him. Or thought I did. A dark sedan passing slowly on the street outside the store. A figure sitting in a parked car at the edge of the lot. A man walking through the parking lot who seemed to be watching the windows. I could not be sure if it was him or if I was just paranoid. Every dark car, every stranger who looked at me too long sent my heart racing. Then 3 weeks after the incident, he came back. It was a Saturday afternoon, broad daylight. The store was full of customers. He walked in through the front door, ordered a tall black coffee at the register, and sat down at a table facing the bar. Facing me. I called the police immediately, but by the time they arrived, he was gone. Vanished into the crowd, leaving his untouched coffee on the table. Under the cup, there was a note. I will always find you. Part 8. The police finally identified him through security footage. His name was Warren Dale Hobbs, 44 years old, with a history of stalking convictions in 3 different states. He had a pattern. He would fixate on service workers, baristas, and cashiers, people who were required to be friendly and make eye contact. He would watch them for weeks, then approach, then escalate. 2 of his previous victims had restraining orders against him. One had moved out of state to escape him. They issued a warrant for his arrest, but Warren Hobbs was nowhere to be found. He had abandoned his apartment and disappeared. I quit my job and moved to a different city. I changed my phone number, my email, everything I could think of. I started a new job at a company with security guards and controlled access. It has been 2 years since I saw Warren Hobbs. The police believe he may have moved to another state, found another victim to fixate on. But I still look over my shoulder everywhere I go. I still check my rearview mirror constantly when I drive. I still flinch when I see a dark sedan with tinted windows. The note he left under that coffee cup haunts me. I will always find you. I do not know if he meant it. I do not know if he is still out there watching, waiting for the right moment. But I know that I will never feel completely safe again. If you work in customer service, please be careful. Pay attention to the customers who come back too often, who watch you too closely, who say things that feel wrong. Trust your instincts. If someone makes you uncomfortable, tell your manager, tell the police, tell anyone who will listen. Because you never know who might be watching you. And you never know when they might decide to make their move.